Good morning, everybody. I hope that you are having a great start to your morning. We're going to give people a few minutes to get here before we get into the topic of today. I have to share that it has been for the greater part of a decade that this time slot has been something that has been quite personal to me. We started first with Power Up, which was an opportunity to be in person and have conversations around the market, around productivity, around mindset, starting our day together in a community setting. And that then led to the pandemic causing a bit of a shift. During that shift, we weren't really able to get together right in person. Things were locked down. And that was the start of something that was known as Reedy and Red, where Rachel Tenpenny and I did more than 300 episodes right here on Facebook Live, having a discussion on all of those things, both around mindset and productivity, but also as a constant, a level of stability, an opportunity to check in with one another and make sure that we could see each other and the things that were going on. So one of the things that this has then caused after COVID was an opportunity for me and others to come together and have a conversation. I was very intentional about this last year, using it as an opportunity. Both Doug and I have used it to travel. We had started from Florida and traveled through Appalachia and moved out to the Rockies in Colorado and the mesas of Colorado, and use that time as an opportunity to build our business, to get in alignment with the things that were important to us, and was often a big time for me to reflect, to write, to think about a lot of topics. And so, although I don't know exactly what the future of this particular program is going to look like or how it's going to have an impact, one of the things that has been important during this time has been multiple people reaching out saying that they loved starting their mornings with conversations. And so, I've always been a fan of words. I love the etymology of words. I love the history of how it's been used and how certain aspects of a word has changed with culture and community. And so because of that, I was very intentional about using the word conscious in conscious conversations. To be conscious is to become aware. It's to come to, it's to awaken to a particular topic, to one's spiritual being. There's a lot of things that are tied into the word conscious. But one of the most important aspects, I think, of consciousness is not just being an observer, but being a participant. Right? When we become conscious of our environment with our choices, with our habits, with emotional intelligence, with the way that our brain works, with how we interact with others, we can then become awakened to those things. And instead of reacting, we can respond. And as you can imagine, as of late, those conversations were largely with the people that I spend my time with, the people that are private coaching clients or people that are a part of our focus groups. And yet more and more people have been reaching out as of late, asking for advice, asking for, what am I supposed to be doing? There's a lot of things going on in our news cycle and what's happening with the economy. And so that's really what kind of thrusted this morning conversation to happen. So first and foremost, I want you to say hello. We're back to me talking to a computer that doesn't necessarily talk back. So if you are here, say hello. I'd love to know who is here. If you have questions, if you have topic discussions, we have had special guests. We have done a lot of different things during this 30-minute time frame, and I'm more than happy to be adjusting to that. But for today, as I was preparing for today, one of the things that kind of came to mind, as I often do, is I revert back to Taoism and refer back to what Lao Tzu has said. And one of the most pressing things that I can think of is a saying from Lao Tzu that is, if you are living in the past, you're living in depression. If you're living in the future, you're living in anxiety. And if you're living in the present, you're living in peace. Now, the reason that I bring that is there's a lot of things going on these days that's causing quite a bit of you to be living in the future. There's anxiety. there's a level of suffering. And when we talk about suffering, we're talking about the internal conflict, the suffering that the brain can cause for us that is causing us to have that level of angst, that level of anxiety, right? In terms of fear and some of the other things that are going on, this is one of the most important aspects when we hear about recession or we hear about things shifting in the market. More often than not, that fear and that anxiety around the future is either coming from two places. Either one, I'm going to have something that I don't want, or I have something that I'm going to lose. Right? And so for some of us, it's a fear of, oh, the market is changing, and so therefore I'm going to lose what I have been building. I'm going to lose my savings. I'm going to lose the business that I've built. I'm going to lose some of those things that I have accumulated. Or on the opposite, it is from that place of something is going to happen to me and I'm fearful of what that is. Now, although any time, quite frankly, is uncertain, right? The one thing that's certain is change. In terms of the way that it affects you and the things that are going on in your world is an understanding that in times of uncertainty, the only thing that you can be certain of is how you show up. Right? And so just to repeat that for anybody that didn't quite catch that, right? In times of uncertainty, the only thing you can be certain of is how you show up in that present moment. So anytime that fear, which I love that acronym, that fear is false evidence appearing real, we have to go back in and understand what are those activities that I am doing, right? This is where we focus on our processes. This is where we're looking at those opportunities to say, whatever the goal might be, and there are plenty of goals that are out there, there is the understanding of what is my personal process. How am I utilizing this time as an opportunity? Am I digging in and looking at some of those things that are happening? And quite frankly, am I thinking that I'm going to reap some benefit from something that I've never sown? Right? Looking at the market of today, we're seeing some shifts. And that shift in what's happening is an understanding that there are certain things that have been happening in terms of things that you have been putting into place, have been implementing. And there are other aspects, almost like the tide has been lifting and you have been riding that tide, right? Maybe you have a decrease in the number of units you've been selling, but there's been an increase in profit because we've been able to ask for more, or the price of a certain product that we sell has increased, right? Well, that's where we've heard for many, many years, do not count on volume, but count on units, right? I can have an influence on units. I can't necessarily have an influence on volume. We're seeing that in terms of the price of certain products, in terms of the demand of certain products or services, right? That is where I can't necessarily influence what the market is willing to pay in any given moment, but I can influence how many people become customers or clients of myself and my business. So looking at our processes, this is one of the most important differentials between being process-oriented and results-oriented when we're talking about goal setting. When I am process-oriented, I am focusing on the how. I have a firm understanding and I have a finger on the pulse of why we have the business that we have. What are those steps or activities that we're doing that's prompting the results that we're getting? Versus if I'm results driven only, then I almost have blinders on, right? And those blinders cause me to believe that there is only one possible outcome, even though neither you nor I are fortune tellers. The fact that there is one possible outcome also means that if anything else goes differently, then somehow there's a problem. You know, I think about this in terms of when people plan maybe a surprise party for someone else, or you know, that person who has planned the quote-unquote perfect vacation for their family, and all of a sudden we're 20 minutes out the door than what was originally scheduled, and that person is fuming because it's no longer going the way that it's supposed to. And then we get to the restaurant late, and that restaurant has a 30-minute wait. And now the person who's fuming that we've left 20 minutes behind schedule is even more pissed because they had reservations from 30 minutes ago. We wouldn't have this problem. Now we're not getting to the park because whatever is happening in the fast pass and so on and so forth. And so what was supposed to be a wonderful day with family, celebrating this time, not at work, using this vacation to make memories, it has been completely hijacked by that individual's misery and suffering because things have not gone the way that they've wanted. That is the mindset of results-oriented goal setting, right? There is one way to do it, and the second that any other person or any other thing happens, I'm going to be disappointed, as if somehow we are not all interconnected to the world that we're in. Conversely, when I am process-oriented, that allows me to focus on those activities and yet also be open to what the universe is going to bring to me in terms of unexpected, maybe positive things. Where is it that the world shows up and that was a pleasant surprise, or the opportunity that we went in a completely different route and that is going to be a memory that we last forever? When we are process-oriented, we are able to control the things that we have control, but we're able to also be flexible and adaptable to what happens around us. The people who are going to thrive in any kind of situation are going to be the people who are focused on their processes more so than just those people who are so focused on those results. And quite frankly, you cannot believe that anxiety or suffering or certain things that are out of our control is something that you can just goal away, right? You can't just will it away by setting goals. We can't just go, I want to make $1 million. And I hope that if I show up every day and I work really hard, that I'm going to make $1 million, right? This is one of those things that you and I both know is the adage that if hard work was a direct correlation to wealth, then we know that janitors and landscapers and many of the people who do hard physical labor would have way more money than some of the other people, quite frankly. And it's because we cannot just goal and work hard, right? A goal without a plan is just a dream. So process-oriented is really going back to our plan. If you find that you have any insecurity, if you find that you're having challenges, if you find that all of a sudden it feels like the tide is pulling out, well, that is when we're able to move into what is going to be a skill-based market. It's always been a skill-based market, but quite frankly, if you have not had the tide in your favor, if certain things have not necessarily been beneficial, then understanding that maybe you've been able to ride that tide, ride that wave a little bit more than what has been maybe what you have considered to be a conscious decision. Right? Again, going back to that consciousness is to utilize this time to go, what is my plan? You know, we're right at the middle of the year. We're coming to the end of June. This is a wonderful opportunity not to shame ourselves of what we should have been doing. It's not to look back and believe that any other choice besides the one that I've made would have been a better choice. It's rather that in order for us to possibly have a real understanding of our present reality, when it comes to our finances, when it comes to our business, when it comes to our pipeline, when it comes to our relationships with others, we have to assess where we are and how we got here, right? The only way that we could possibly even make any kind of pivot, any way of making sure that we arrive to point B, is to understand where we are at point A right now in this present moment. So taking this time, next Thursday, we have a mid-year alignment workshop that's happening. It's absolutely free. Please register. I'd love to spend a few hours with you next Thursday, which is an opportunity for us to do a deep dive into those processes, into certain aspects of where you are in this present moment. But that is going to require a little bit of homework. And that homework is understanding, where have you been spending money? How much revenue have you actually brought in? What have the results been for your personal expenses? I promise that many of you probably locked down very tight around the pandemic. You established a budget. Maybe during our conversations, you looked at ways that you can save money. Maybe you were negotiating with vendors. Maybe you were looking at rebates on certain aspects of what you were doing. Anything to make sure that you were creating a little bit of a cushion. And as for any of you that have been with me for a while, know that I say that quite often we as a people will pinch a penny because we have to, not because we want to. And over the course of the last 18 to 24 months, and the way that the market has been, no matter what industry you've been in, it seems like everything has been booming. And it has, quite frankly, been from that place of understanding that we have been maybe a little less intentional in riding that wave. So looking at that budget that you put away 2 years ago, and you've just kind of been going with a certain level of abundance, I'm not wanting to take that away from you. I don't want you to automatically go into a place of mental scarcity, but really having an understanding of where are we? Where have we been spending money as a family? Where have we maybe been going out to eat a little bit more than what we used to be doing in terms of our health, also in terms of our finances? Looking at certain aspects of maybe from our business, we've added certain things on as opposed to some of the other things that are there. So looking ahead and seeing what are those activities that you can do to be intentional. Like I was mentioning, you cannot reap what you did not sow. And so if I look out this window and I am curious as to why I don't have any tomatoes growing, but I realize I didn't plant any seeds for tomatoes, I can't be disappointed. But keeping with that narrative, kind of that farm narrative for a moment, a farmer plants seeds and doesn't walk away. A farmer plants seeds and then makes sure that there aren't any weeds and protects it from too much sun or protects it from too much water or protects it from vermin and checks in daily and does what they can as a part of the process, but not necessarily looking at it on day 2 or day 3 going, why don't I have any fruit? Well, the same thing can be said of our relationships. The same thing could be said of our business. The same thing could be said of our wealth. It is, instead of being so focused on those results, really falling in love with and getting back into relationship with our money, with our processes, with our relationships with other. This is, as we talk about the market and we talk about some of the things that are there, this is where we can kind of look at the last 18 months, specifically for those of you that are on here that are my real estate people, right? It is an understanding that the last 18 to 24 months has quite frankly been a market of greed and scarcity. Now, wait a minute, right? Shots fired, whatever you might be thinking. This is an understanding that what I mean is, quite frankly, there has been a level of unprofessionalism. I don't mean that as if you've not been professional. What I mean is that in the market, we have seen, quite frankly, where some of you have been taking listings and sellers have been asking for some number that is not based on any material fact, minus that there has been a demand. Again, greed from the sellers of wanting significantly more than what the house is worth. And then buyers who have been in a scarcity mindset of, if I don't get this house, I'm going to lose out, has bred a kind of economy in which we're throwing spaghetti against the wall and hoping that things stick. Again, that is not a skill-based activity. That is not a skill-based economy. So as we're watching things cool down, and I use this analogy of taking a bite of soup, right? If you've ever had soup and it's been so hot that when you take a bite of soup, it burns the top of your mouth. When we're talking about the market cooling, we're not talking about it getting to the place where the soup is cold and has that nasty film on the top layer. We're talking about lowering the temperature just enough so that it is still delicious, it is still warm and steamy, but it's not one that I'm not going to have any flavor or that I'm not going to be able to enjoy the rest of the soup. There's a huge gap between scalding and where it's nasty, cold, and filmy. That's what we're seeing as the market is relaxing back to kind of pre-pandemic, looking at what did the market look like 3 years ago. Quite frankly, the market 3 years ago was still a wonderful market. There were lots of things happening. Interest rate was still below the national historical average since the 70s. In terms of home prices, there was competition, but maybe it wasn't 50 offers on a house in which people are offering $200,000-$300,000 over a $400,000 house's value, right? This is where we go back into those skills and understand some of those things that are there. Where have you gotten lazy? Where have you been able to go into an appointment? Quite frankly, if you've been working with a seller, they've been loving this market. You've not pissed off anybody lately. Where, as we look ahead, we can see some of those opportunities that are there, which is to go, where can I have control of the way that I show up? How is my presentation? How is my presentation deck? Am I asking for business? Have I been lazy with the people that are part of my sphere? Have I been lazy with some of those past clients and making sure that they feel loved on and communicated with, right? This is also from the place of, am I attracting an attitude of gratitude and abundance, right? When we think of gratitude, even though I might be recalling certain things that have happened in the past, right? I am so grateful for the relationships that I have, seeing some of those faces that are on here, right? I'm very grateful for many of you. Kelly Fenton, I always adore you, right? And so there's an understanding of right there. I can go back and realize that my gratitude is coming from a present moment. I am thankful for all of the things that have taken me to today. I'm not living in the past. I am acknowledging the past in a place of gratitude. And then in terms of abundance, abundance just doesn't mean that it's pouring over and that I have an unrealistic grasp on reality, and that even though my bank account says 77 cents right now, that I know that $1 million is coming my way. I might be attracting $1 million. I might be willing to do whatever it takes to bring on $1 million if that is a goal of mine. But it is not just going to happen because I believe that I can goal it into existence, right? So am I keeping from a place of gratitude and abundance while still showing up every day at the highest level that I possibly can, right? This is that concept of being impeccable with your now, is to show up and strive for excellence instead of perfection, in an understanding that if I show up at a high level and I give everything that I can based on my current resources, my time, my knowledge, my relationships, the things that are going on in my home, that if I do that and I show up at the highest level that I can today in this present moment, how could I possibly be disappointed in the results? And if I repeat that tomorrow by showing up at the highest level that I can, maybe I have 2 hours before an entire afternoon with family. What is the highest and best use of those next 2 hours of my day? Being impeccable with my now, being impeccable with that present moment, is how I can have influence on those things that I have control over, and also being open to whatever those results are, right? This is a kind of term in terms of high intention, low attachment. So I have a high intention, I'm striving for excellence, I'm showing up at the highest level that I can, but I have a low attachment to what those results look like, because the results will be what they're going to be. I might go for a particular pitch, and I'm up against another coach, and I'm going to do my best, and I'm going to present my best, and I'm going to ask questions, and I'm going to do those things. And if that particular person goes with another coach or with another person as opposed to me for the product or service that I sell, I'm not attached to that. There were other variables in that person's world. There could have been another connection that I have nothing that I can control over. That person could remind them of their mother. Whatever it could be, it doesn't quite matter. Because I have low attachment, I go back to striving for excellence and making sure that my pipeline is large enough that I'm not necessarily influenced by that person's no or not right now, right? So thinking about some of those things that are here in terms of the tide is that go back to the fundamentals, right? Invest in yourself is one of the things in terms of a skill-based market. Investing in yourself. Am I reading? Am I going on YouTube? Am I starting my morning with conversations like this? What am I doing to pour into myself before I pour into others? Making sure that that is also from that place of what got me here is not necessarily what's going to get me through this next phase of my business or my relationships or certain things that are involved. So I'm looking ahead and trying to see some of those things that I can do. Going back to those fundamentals that maybe I've been neglecting. Investing in myself looks like those courses, looks like those trainings, looks like maybe you're not necessarily motivated at the moment, right? No one can motivate you, but they can inspire you. So where are you getting inspired? And who are you lending for inspiration for yourself in the way that you show up? I was having a conversation with someone that I was coaching and said, I'm just not necessarily feeling super inspired right now, super motivated right now. And I asked the question, well, who's inspiring you? What's inspiring you, right? What are you working towards? If I've got money in the bank and I don't really want for anything and I haven't really made any connection to my present activities to any exterior goal or even internal goal of being the best version of myself, of course I'm going to be completely fine with where I am right now. And I do need to hit on this for a moment. It is okay to be okay with where you are, right? Contentment is okay. Complacency is not okay. Complacency, quite frankly, is cancerous. Looking at contentment as I am happy from where I am, This is gratitude. It's coming from a place of gratitude. It's also understanding that you are a human being, not a human doing. You are not a machine. So the idea that you're supposed to show up every single day, we're not going to take any consideration on your emotional wherewithal. We're not going to take any consideration of things that are going on with the family. We're not going to take on any consideration of your health or someone else's health, and just believe you're supposed to show up like a machine. The problem with showing up like a machine is that it is not necessarily in alignment with the organic patterns that are in nature. And even though as humans we love to believe that we are not attached to nature, you are a natural organism, right? And so understanding that concept of the fact that there is nature in you, as interconnected as you are to the trees and the stars and everything around you, also means that there is an organic pattern, right? We see the roots of a tree mirror what looks like the insides of our lungs or what looks like our veins, right? We're able to see certain aspects of things inside of us that are also mirrored in the universe. Well, then we also need to understand that there are seasons in the universe. There is a time for rest and that there is a time for growth, right? We're currently in that spring, summertime. So this is when everything is growing. The sun is out for 15 plus hours a day, right? So understanding that you are not going to be constantly striving 150% every single day, right? So we do need to give ourselves grace in the natural order of when does my body need rest? When does my brain need rest? When might I be pulling back? But that needs to be an intentional, or it needs to be a intuitional aspect, as opposed to I'm just being lazy or I am just being unmotivated. So looking at yourself, looking at the day, looking at the things that are here in the future is having conversations. I hope that you will join me. We will, for the foreseeable future, be bringing this every Tuesday morning at 8:30. Of course, those of you that joined us for Reedy and Red, we were Monday through Friday, every single day at 8:30. If that's something that you want, I need to hear from you, because that's the only way that this would ever turn into something daily with special guests and programming. But truly, I want to do what I can. And the one thing that I can do is speak and share and learn for myself and bring those things back to you in a way that even if one piece of information is helpful to frame your day differently or to give you a positive outlook on certain things, then I deem that as success for myself. And so that is one of the most important aspects. I might not be physically with you, no matter where you are in the country or the world, but I am absolutely with you as we move through some of the different things that are going on, as we look at the future of aspects. I want to make sure, quite frankly, that you are intentional in your days and you are grounded in your ways. And that is the only way that we can do that, is by making sure that we are present and that we're being absolutely intentional with the activities that we're doing in those present moments. So, we've got about 2 minutes left. I'd love to hear some takeaways from you. I see tons of hellos and good mornings. So looking at the last 2 minutes, share with me as a reminder. We used to talk about this of AHA stands for Agents Helping Agents. It's Associates Helping Associates, right? That idea of as a community, advocates helping advocates. When you share something that was a takeaway for you, you might have clung to something, or maybe something stood out to you that everyone else might have missed. They were grabbing coffee, they were taking the dog out, they were unloading the dishwasher, right? Whatever it might be, I would love for you to share with me in the comment section some of the things that maybe you're taking into today or you're taking into this week. And always, I love seeing so many of you and interacting with you all. Definitely giving you hugs as much as I can virtually from the computer. Kelly Fitton said, you are spot on. Great first session. Spoke to me 100%. Love hearing that. Thank you so much. Yvette, good morning. Right. Shantae, good morning. Thank you. Shantae did put in the comment section. So anybody who is interested in that mid-year alignment workshop, using that, there's a link right there for you to be able to RSVP. That is helpful for us. We do have a little bit of homework, right, in terms of you going in, doing an assessment of where you're at financially, what your pipeline looks like, maybe revisiting some of those intentions that you set at the beginning of the year and looking at whether or not you want to double down on those intentions, or maybe you're setting new intentions with new information, new goals, new priorities, right? And so that is one of those things that is there. what I always try to do is be very, very mindful of your time. So looking at the clock, we've got about a minute or so left. We're just coming up to the 9 a.m. hour. As much as I love seeing that your eyes are here, I would love to hear from you. So again, whether you put it in the comment section, and if you have further questions, right? It's not necessarily Dear Abby, but if you have questions that you would love to see addressed during this hour, if there are topics that you would like to either hear me ramble on, or even better, if I go and find an expert in a particular area and bring them to you as a special guest, of course, that is one of those things that it's either me being helpful or me being able to try to connect you to someone that is helpful. Let's see, Angelo said, always love seeing you, Angelo. She said, thank you for wanting to do what you can so we can be more intuitional and intentional. Angela said her takeaway is to strive for excellence versus perfection. Absolutely. The excellence is what you have control over. Perfection looks differently for everyone, and perfection, quite frankly, does not take in the interconnection and the interconnectedness that we have of the world that we are absolutely a part of. And so when I'm looking at that excellence, it's what can I do in the present moment, right? It turned very, very quickly to 9:01. My union reps are yelling at me. I'm just kidding. But understanding that this is a wonderful opportunity. Tricia said, great reminder of highest and best use of time. Thank you for starting my day on such a great note. I am so happy that this could be helpful for a few of you here. Please encourage other people to join us. Anything that you would love, I'd love feedback from you. I definitely think that those things are definitely helpful. And I appreciate your comments and your feedback. Thank you all. Have a wonderful day, and I will see many of you very, very soon. Take care.